Okay, so what we're going to do today for Integrity Capital is to talk about vetting the right client. And this is really a big deal and continues to become more of a big deal. And what we're talking about today is, you know, our process that we go through of disqualifying not only deals, okay, so that's certainly an area, but also lenders, okay, that's another area that we're vetting out all the time to say who's the right fit for our particular culture, our particular methodology, and the overarching direction, which is to be the most proactive commercial mortgage company in the world. And to do that, we also have to have the right fit of the client. So it's not just necessarily our own process, which it is. It's not necessarily just the lender, which it is, but it is also us, right? The way we function. But then the final stroke of that is the client. Because you could have all three of these. We could be on the right cylinder. Our process is great. The lender is great, but you have the wrong client. And now you don't have an experience for somebody that went, that was amazing, right? And the reason why is because of a perspective that we can't change, right? And so what we're trying to do here is we're trying to find the right fit. You guys hear me talk about that a lot, but we can't change people. We're just trying to find the right people that fit with us, right? And that means that not everybody's going to fit. So part of our vetting process, even when you guys are making marketing calls as well, is you're starting to find out that's probably not somebody we're going to work with, right? And there's particular reasons why, and there's methodologies that we try to go through in order to identify who's going to be the right fit for us, when we're doing business, and why we're doing business. So there's a couple of things. It's not arduous or long, but I think it's important nonetheless, and it's one that I would say is a non-negotiable item. There's a few things in the process that are non-negotiables for us when we go through the process. We've learned some of that lately on, having a backup lender. That's a non-negotiable. We don't go forward if we don't do that. So the first one that we're going to talk about is character flags. Okay? Are they greedy? When I say greedy, what do you guys think I mean by that?
They want more than what's they seem to what's the word I'm looking for?
Maybe
They think what they like their property has way more value than being realistic, maybe.
Yeah, so the idea, I think what you were trying to get at there, Lana, was this idea that they just keep wanting more.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's never enough for them, right? So I'll give you an example. Years ago, it was actually, ironically, the first deal I did in the business was with a unnamed person, but he was working on a self-storage facility. He was buying the self-storage facility for $2.5 million under the market value. Okay, so just take that into your purview for a minute. He was buying this thing for $2.5 million below what it was worth. Okay, and throughout the process, I continued to see that every corner we turned, that the only thing he could see was, I want more. It needs to be less. I mean, it was this whole patternistic thing that started to happen. And then we finally got to the very end of the transaction. And I was a rookie and I didn't have any mentorship at the time. And so I never actually had him sign the fee agreement. I'd given it to him. But I closed the deal, and he actually went in and took me out of the escrow, which he'd already cut my fee down to half. And then he decided, when I called him after and said, well, why did you take me out of escrow? And he said, well, I'll pay you when I feel like it, right?
Oh.
And this guy had just made $2.5 million. I mean, it was, so my point of it is that when someone's greedy and that's their sort of character, you're going to see it manifest with a perpetual patternistic thing where everything becomes an over negotiation. Okay. Now, what I want to be clear about is, and what I'm not saying is that somebody's negotiating, okay, because that's going to happen on every deal almost. That's okay. There's a healthy balance of negotiation, and that should happen. What I'm talking about is somebody, and Tom, you remember this one we did recently, where the gentleman was incessant that he had to keep negotiating over and over. Do you remember that, Tom? The deal that we finally.
Yeah, once he got what he wanted, he'd negotiate more and more almost.
Right. So it was never enough. Okay. And so it's really important that we identify that early on as you're dealing with them. You keep your antennas up to go, is this just normal stuff, or is this becoming a pattern? I'm seeing it never ending. It's never enough. And another key that you can watch on that is if they literally see you as there's no value, but you're just getting in the way. So all you are to them is cost, right? So that's just something to really be aware of as you keep your antennas up, looking for character flags. You guys following me on that so far?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
The second one is irritable. Now, in all fairness, every one of us has an irritable day here or there, right? So don't misunderstand me here, but I'm going to throw irritable and jerky kind of in the same category for a minute. The other day I had, Lana, you remember this because I told you that I had quote unquote let her go.
Mm-hmm.
There's a gal that started working with me early on, and I began asking her questions. And I was trying to get clarity. I just couldn't, there's some things that weren't making sense. I was asking some clarifying questions. And her continued response was huffiness, agitation, and annoyance with almost every clarifying question. Why can't you figure this out? Like, and again, everybody has a bad day, so don't misinterpret me. But a persistent, ongoing irritableness, jerkiness, annoyance, if that continues to take place, that's a red flag. And here's why. At the very beginning of the transaction, we're not even getting into the tough stuff. This is just the beginning. When we start actually getting into the deal, things are going to get tough. There's going to be stuff that we're going to run into. So it's really important that if you see that as a patternistic trait, then it's probably something that you want to avoid, because you're just going to see somebody who's not satisfied, but just as agitated at every corner. Lana, we dealt with this on the again, naming nameless for the sake of
Yes.
but we dealt with that all through the process, Lana.
Mm-hmm.
Agitation, irritability, jerkiness, just this continued annoyance. And the undergirding of that was a demanding spirit.
Yes.
It has to be my way. It's not my way, then it's a failure completely. That is a huge problem. And we can't change that. Only God can, and we always hope that it happens. But what my point is that, that kind of demanding, irritable, jerky spirit, we have to really stay away from. Because again, we could do the best job in the world, they'll never be satisfied. Here's a good analogy to think about. A mentor of mine calls it the mosaic problem, the cracked mosaic. So if you walk into a room and there's just this beautiful mosaic like all over the whole room, and there's one cracked mosaic, where does your eye go to, right? The cracked mosaic. Well, if somebody is just always focused on the cracked mosaic and not the rest of the beautiful room, then you probably have a problem. So you have to just really keep your antenna up and ask yourself the question, is this person patternistically irritable, jerky, and demanding? And if the answer is yes, then I think we need to probably part ways. Okay. Any thoughts, questions, comments before I move on? Okay. The third one is just lacking integrity. So you go, well, gosh, Dave, how do you figure that out? Well, there's some ways, and I'll give you some cues. This isn't an exact science, but there are some things that you can scientifically do to try to figure this out, or at least be aware of. If somebody is continuing to ask you things like, hey, let's not tell the lender that, or let's hide this, or, let's kind of say this to make the deal work. Now, again, I'm putting the globe of grace here because we live in a fallen world and people are going to do stuff like not pay their taxes. So if we didn't work with anybody who did that, we wouldn't be working with anybody. So, so don't misinterpret me. But again, here's the pattern. You're hearing this pattern, 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 right? So if you're seeing a pattern and you're addressing it like, let's not do that. Let's just, and you keep kind of running into this, then, you probably want to sway from it. That's one way. A continued ask of like, let's hide that, or let's do this. So that's an overt ask, okay? Now I want to talk about the covert. Covert is, they didn't talk about it, you just found out about it, okay? So, for example, I had a client one time who owned a gas station, and he started doing some things where he was withholding information from me. And therefore the lender, when he found out, he's like, what is this? I was like, I don't know, right? And so all of a sudden I saw this and addressed it. He apologized, said it was a mistake. I always give people the benefit of the doubt. It happened again, right? So shame on me for continuing. Eventually I had to fire him because it happened 2 or 3 times where I was like, okay, this guy has a problem with his integrity. He won't share information because he thinks somehow it'll get him there. So it's something that you have to be aware of. And if you see it happen, you have to address it. If it happens again, you probably got to move on. So we're always looking for integrity. Ironically, there's a company I know named Integrity Capital. I don't know if you guys have heard of them, but that was a joke. You guys can laugh. Yeah. So, but if somebody lacks integrity, then we need to move on, right? What's one of our tenets? Honesty, no matter
the consequences.
right? I did this years ago. It was a $60,000 commission. So it hurt, but there was a client who continued to want to cut out a contractor who brought the deal to me. The contractor didn't know about it, that she was going around his back and she was going to cut him off. I kept addressing it with her, saying, this isn't right. You need to talk to him about it and not do this underhanded thing. She wouldn't do it, and I fired her. Okay, they closed the deal, but I walked away from it because It's not an option. It's not, I'm not willing to sell my soul for $60,000. Okay. So it's really important that from a character perspective, we have to pick up on cues when you're dealing with clients. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think all of them together. Yeah, it's important because then you might come across somebody who seems like the least greediest or the least irritable, the least jerky, but if they lack integrity, that's a huge one. Like I always think of the broker that called me the one
Yeah.
time, and he was a chipper guy. Really, he would have been great to work with. He was balls of fun, and he's like, and I got the client. He's willing to pay 5%. Just tell him you're my good buddy, and we work on all the stuff together. He'll trust you, and you'll get 2.5%. And I'm like, sounds like a lie to your client out the gate, sir.
Right.
But
Yes.
he only really hits, and I guess he hits greedy too, but definitely lacks integrity. It's one of those four really throws it all awry.
Good.
One thing I think about too is like, even if we lack integrity, at some point in the journey, we'll start just unintentionally lying. Like, you could go to your kids, your wife, your girlfriend, your husband, or whoever, and then like it could be like the smallest thing, like, hey, that meeting was 30 minutes, but really the meeting was 20 minutes. So like you'll start unintentionally just doing things out of integrity with lack of integrity, not knowingly. So it becomes a habit. So
Yeah.
It's like catch it from the start. Don't let it become a common thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. So you are faithful in the little things, you'll be faithful in the big things, right? And to Tom's point as well, is it's not one out of the three, it's all three, right? Or four. All that has to happen or else we can't proceed. Again, we're not looking for perfection. We're not looking for someone to have a perfect personality, so don't misinterpret this, because we all have character flaws. Boy, could I tell you mine. We're just trying to get a centrality of character, of a worldview and a perspective that is reasonableness, right? A levelness of integrity, a reasonableness of these things. And so these are things that we have to be aware of, okay? The second thing is a non-victim mentality. And you go, well, Dave, what the heck is that all about? Well, there's another line of people that I've run into in the past, Tom and I have as well, where they just seem to can't get out of their own way, so to speak. And every time you turn a corner, they just have made a decision that just has gotten them into a lot of trouble. We had a client, I don't know if it was a year and a half, 2 years ago, but she owned an automotive facility, and nice gal, just kept getting into problems. Every time we turned around, it was like she didn't even know it. I mean, it was almost, I didn't know if she didn't know it. We couldn't figure out if she didn't know it or if she just wouldn't tell us. We couldn't quite figure that out. But it was just like credit issues. And, oh, sorry, I didn't pay that one. And, oh my gosh, she didn't know that happened. And it was just this literally incessant pattern of victimness that kept happening, where it was just like, oh my gosh, we can't help this lady. We did end up getting it closed, but here's the problem. Then the lender was stuck with it, right? She was late on her first payment. And then guess who had to come back in and try to figure it out? We did. And so we just, so it was something that we should have picked up on up at front of this patternistic issue. So it's not only, so you'll see this pattern of someone just keeps having issues in their life, and then also somebody that is, I guess, a woe is me or a complainer. So the non-victim mentality goes hand in glove a little bit with the character in the sense of this. If you're talking to somebody and you keep hearing out of their mouth blame over and over again, I think you need to be worried, because that means that you're going to get blamed next. It's kind of like if you have a friend and every time you're hanging out with them, they're talking bad about somebody behind their back. Guess what they're probably doing when you're not around, right? So the point of it is, again, not that we're looking for perfection. I'm just trying to give you these notions that I've found will become very big problems for you if you're not careful. And if you see somebody who keeps blaming the lender, oh, this lender did this and I hated them, and this person did this and that was a mess, and this, you just keep seeing a pattern of somebody blaming other people, and you don't see somebody taking personal responsibility, that's probably somebody that you're not going to work with. And an example easier is just a question, because you're like, well, how do you figure this out? Well, some of it is just you got to keep your antenna up and listen. I'm giving you the concepts to be aware of and the scenarios. But you can also ask, hey, who else have you worked with in the past? How was your experience? It's a great question to ask, because you're going to find out real fast, it sucked. I hated working with them. They were horrible. What about this other person? Yeah, they were ridiculous. I couldn't stand them. Da, da, da. And all of a sudden you start listening and going like, oh, okay. Is there something there? And look, don't get me wrong. I mean, people legitimately have bad experiences. I have, you have, and that's okay. So you just need to be discerning through that, is what I'm saying. Of the distinction.
It's kind of like the reverse recommendation. I kind of like that approach, because it's you don't even have to go to the people that they've worked with. It's just what's their experience with the people they worked with, and they're giving themselves their own recommendation. I really like that, actually. That's a good way to do it.
Yeah. So you what we're trying to figure out there is just asking the question and kind of go, oh no, is this person unreasonable? Right? We've all gone on, Google reviews before, and you see lots of good ones. Then you see one that is just this sandblast of anger, maliciousness, and you're like, gosh, this person seems a little unreasonable there. So I think you just have to use some discernment through this, okay? Are you guys, can I clarify anything there, or is that making sense, or any comments or things you want me to flush out on that one? By the way, do you guys agree with me on this or disagree? I mean,
Absolutely.
okay, all right.
Reminds me of narcissistic traits,
yeah,
Yeah.
that's actually really good, Lana. Yeah, narcissistic traits. So just looking for problems, so I think, again, we're trying to see patternistic mentality, that someone has just built a worldview around that. So we just have to be careful, because it's kind of like a friend of mine. So my wife was in training, and he said to us at the beginning, which at first I thought was kind of weird, but he said, if the client won't follow your eating regimen, fire them. I was like, well, gosh, that's a little harsh. And he goes, well, I'll tell you why. He said, I've done this for years. He said, they'll blame you for the reason why they didn't lose weight, right? But they wouldn't listen to you. So, I started to kind of go, oh, okay, now I get where you're headed with this, right? So, and he goes, that'll ruin your reputation. And he goes, you didn't even do anything wrong. So, these are just things you have to use as discernment. Okay, so the third little element today, and we don't need to go much longer after this, but I will leave it open for any comments or things you guys feel like I missed at the end. So if something pops out to you, to go, Dave, maybe you will want to add this, I'm open to that. But the client buys into our process, okay? do they want to work with us and follow our process? Okay, not their own, but do they see value in this? I'm not saying that we need to have somebody who's a robot. I'm just saying that they're generally saying, I buy into your process. And one of the ways you can figure that out is, how do you feel working with a consultant like us? How do you feel about that? And here's what I mean by that. And you guys will hear me say this a lot. We're just trying to find the right people with a particular makeup. They're hardwired a particular way. We can't change somebody's hardwiring. Only God can do that. But we can identify it and just get in the right pathway with people. And then, so some people love the idea of consultants. I do personally. I think it's a wonderful thing to have people outside helping and giving wisdom. I think it's a wonderful thing. And so I search for consultants all the time and everything. I do it in my marriage. I do it in my friendships. I'm just looking for wisdom, right? Because I'm like, I don't have all the answers. So I'd rather have somebody representing me. Some people just love that and they thrive on it. And they love having a third party, an intermediary, somebody who can help them, consult with them. And then other people just don't. They just, they want to do it themselves. They don't see any value in consultation. They just see it as a nuisance or something in the way, unneeded cost, things like that. Or, and then in that, people are like, I want to do it my way. But what we're trying to do is I believe, otherwise I wouldn't be doing this, but that what we offer is of a tremendous value. I mean, like, amazing value. I think that what we have is very rare, and I don't think you'll see a broker out there doing what we do, period. I think we have a tremendous value to bring to people. And so it's really important that they buy into it, or else we can't help them. So it's important somewhere in that process that when we're explaining it, that you try to clarify this. How do you feel working with a consultant like us? Not too into that, or I've done that in the past, it just doesn't fit for me, or I think it's great, love it. That's just one way. Another way is you just kind of picking up on things, them asking you lots of questions. Hey, what do we do with this? And what do we, someone that is engaged in wanting information and asking questions. That's a person that's probably really loves information and wants consultation. Okay? So those are the things that I want us to be very, very aware of. Vetting out clients, getting the right person, the right fit, so that we can have a wonderful experience, right? We can bless them with the wonderful proactive process that we have, and we can save Lana from mental tyranny. So, so what do you guys think? Is there anything I missed there? Is there anything that I need to add? Anything that you want to change?
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I think that, it's important that obviously nobody's going to hit every single mark perfectly, but I think normally when we find that somebody misses one mark, they aren't going to miss just one mark. They're going to, they're going to, miss on multiple levels. Like the client we had that was over negotiating, definitely did not buy into our process, and it was trying to negotiate in ways that was basically, saying, this didn't take you much work, it's like, obviously not buying into our process, or the other lady where it was, the victim mentality. It's kind of, was, that could kind of fall into different categories. How did, why was it the victim mentality, or was there things not being disclosed? Was there that was kind of not really a victim, where she was kind of putting herself in those situations by not disclosing information. I think the more you see somebody misses one mark, they tend to miss more and more altogether, unfortunately.
There's also thinking too. That's a great point, Juan, because you can also look at it like, if they weren't a cold call client, how did they hear about us, or who referred them? Could be a great indicator too of the right client, because we know who brought them in. But then also, if we don't know who they were referred by, or if they weren't a referral, we ask them, hey, how did you find out about us? Just so we can see what they know and who we are, so that from there we can vet out if it's going to be a good fit.
Yeah, that's a good point too, of where did they come from, right? So it helps us, if it comes from somebody we really trust and, they know them, great way, because then we can ask them too, hey, what do you know about this person? Hey, I don't know that much, or I know a lot. It's another great way to discern through if there's anything we need to be aware of. I did have that happen years ago where someone, again, these are wisdom, as they always say, is someone that hits their head enough times and then finally learns from it. But the idea is, this guy told me in advance, I think this guy's bipolar. Well, guess what David didn't do? He didn't listen, right? And at the end of the transaction, it all came out in a weird, awkward moment. But so it's good to ask, right? Hey, what do you know? Tell me what you know about this person. Help me understand. If there is there anything I need to be worried about? And that's a good way we can discern through that. So it's a great point, Dan. And I think one of the things you can also pick up on that I don't think I mentioned too, that just popped up in my mind, is if somebody's cutting you out of the process continually and just going directly to the lender, it's probably another thing that could be a red flag, right? Some people just do it out of, ignorance, so don't make that too overzealous. But if you start to see that, because Tom, that did happen with that guy we let go. He just kept cutting
That's
the process.
That's a number 3, though. I mean, yeah, definitely falls into the number 3. If they're not buying into the process, they're not seeing the value in what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's vetting the right client. It's a non-negotiable. We have to do it, and we've learned that the hard way just recently. I'll take full responsibility for that. And successful failure, but we learn from this stuff, and we want to implement it and make it part of our process. Why? Well, a couple reasons. One, we can't have a proactive experience for the client if we don't. And then number 2, it's also for peace of mind. You guys, for the client as well, so that we can have a great experience at the end of the day and we can celebrate when we have a win. So that's vetting the right client for Integrity Capital in our process.